Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Drum Charts 101. My name is Heather Meyer, and I will be running everything in the background for our session today. So let's get things started. I'm pleased to introduce today's presenter, Joe Bergamini. Joe Bergamini maintains a diverse career as a drumming performer and educator. Enjoying various styles of playing, he is most well known for his progressive rock drumming in the bands Happy the Man and Forefront. Joe tours internationally as the drummer for the Doo-Wop Project, has worked extensively on Broadway, and has also appeared with the Philly Pops and the Detroit, Jacksonville, Seattle, Indianapolis, and Vancouver Symphony Orchestras. Recognized internationally as an educator, Joe has given hundreds of drum clinics in schools, retail stores, and conventions. He has been teaching privately for over 25 years. Joe is very active in the publishing and education areas of the music industry. In 2015, he became education consultant for Sabian, designing and directing the Sabian Education Network for drum teachers. As the senior drum editor for Hudson Music since 2009, Joe has worked in the acquisitions, project management, and editing of educational drum products. As an author, Joe has won 4 Modern Drummer Readers Poll Awards for his drum books and is co-owner with Dom Famularo of Wisdom Media, an independent music publisher distributed worldwide by Alfred Music. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Welcome, everybody. Heather, is that my cue to
That's your
start?
cue.
All right, great. Hey, everybody, welcome. I'm Joe. Thanks for being here with us today. Um, this is a little poll. I'm going to talk about some of this information later on. The poll, obviously, you can see is which measure of this, this is this transcription of the same groove. Which one is the easiest to read? That's our poll. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. So, yeah, so thanks for being here. I'm here because I look at a lot of charts. I look at drum charts every day of my life. I never set out to be an expert, but it's become a big part of my life. I look at them as an author, as an editor, which is always interesting. And I also look at them as a performer. So I get handed charts in sessions and in recording sessions, gigs, and Broadway shows. And they come in different flavors. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. The Let me tell you a little bit about my journey with Finale. I always enjoyed transcribing music, so I started really early on, and I probably started using Finale around 1995. It's a lot easier now. Okay, the first book I did with Finale was this book, Modern Drummer Classic Tracks, and in this book, when I did the engravings for it, you had to create the entire drum set map, and Finale has made that now much better, much smoother, and I'm going to show you a little bit about that today. It was a lot harder back then. You had to do every note head and everything individually. So, and then the first project I did with Alfred was this book, Drum Techniques of Led Zeppelin, which is still available. And I'm going to show you a page from this later. We used Finale for this as well. When I started getting involved as an editor with Hudson Music, we used the program for all of our books. Two of the biggest books that I had the privilege of working on were Neil Peart, Taking Center Stage. Happy birthday, Neil. It would have been his birthday today. We used Finale for this. Willie Rose did the engravings. And then we also used Finale for the Stuart Copeland book that we did with Hudson. Probably the thing that led me to wanting to do this webinar was a book I published myself called The Working Drummer's Chart Book. And probably like a lot of you, I found myself making charts for my gigs and doing them by hand, and then wanting to get into the shorthand, wanting to be able to do them in Finale in a shorthand way. So let me start by talking about the kinds of drum charts that we're talking about here. This is Drum Chart 101. So I'm going to try to keep it fairly high level, and I'm going to share my screen. All good? You all see that? So the first thing we're looking at here, this is actually a page from Drum Techniques of Led Zeppelin. This is a transcription. So what's a transcription? A transcription is a note for note drum part that you're transcribing everything exactly the way it's supposed to be played. Although there are repeat marks in here, this is an exact note for note transcription. That's one type of chart. Another type of drum chart would be, I actually got this one on a gig on Labor Day. This is a what I would call a professional drum chart. So it has exact notation on it. It's obviously an exact form of a song. It has slash notation on it, meaning that there's interpretation left to the player. So this is not a transcription. And when a drummer is handed a chart like this, you may or may not, this says Hot Dixieland, you may or may not play that exact thing. And here's a right here where it says Piumoso and it says Small Tom. As a drummer, you'd look at that and say, they're looking for kind of a Gene Krupa swing thing there. I might not play that exactly note for note, but this is what I would call a pro chart. And then last but not least, the thing I've been working on a lot. Do some of you in the audience make your own charts for gigs and then put them on an iPad? That's something that I do a lot. And this is a roadmap type of a drum chart. So in this one, it's got some things transcribed, but when I'm on a gig and when I'm using the charts on a gig, I mostly don't want a transcription. And the reason I don't want a transcription is I want a short form thing that I can preferably see on one page. I'm talking about the kind of gig that's maybe a wedding, a corporate, a club date that probably many of us do. I want to see the thing laid out so I can see the form of the song and quickly identify where I am and what's going on. So in a case like this, I'll just transcribe the basic groove, and then I have these little shorthand play sevens and play fives that make it a lot easier for me to use the chart. Importantly, I also have the song form things. I use some people will put like verse, chorus, interlude. I use an ABC format just to keep myself positioned in the song. Typically, I use A as the verse and B as the chorus. So I want to point out that you might be wondering why, if you're a drummer and you've been using charts on your gigs, why someone might hand you a chart with like 32 repeats in a row on it, um, with no indication of how many there are, rather than just saying something like this, like play seven or play five. So when you're, I think we have a mixed audience here today. So some people are probably drummers and some probably are band directors or orchestrators. If you're making a chart for an entire ensemble, you can't really do this because all I did here, this is just a visual shortening. I just put have this in one measure. I put a line in it and I said play seven. So this is a shorthand chart. If you play the audio back, this isn't going to play 7 bars. So if you're doing a score, you're not going to be able to compress those into a play seven, to my knowledge. If that feature was available, that'd be super cool. So sometimes you'll get a chart with like a lot of repeats on it. And when I get those from an orchestrator, I know it's because they don't know there's no way to really compress those measures. But if you're making a chart for your own purposes, you're free to do the shorthand as much as possible. So some of the things on this, like drawing in these little lines and trying to figure out a way to do it, I get asked a lot by my students how to do things like that. So I wanted to share some of that today. So and again, feel free to type in your questions. And if you're coming up to something that's relevant to what I'm talking about, I can try to address it as we go along. So all good so far. Let me see. So a lot of what I'm going to say about actually looking at charts is from getting them from other people and then getting them at Broadway shows and working on them with when I had a Broadway show that was my chair and I was able to work with the copyist, and it was really cool to go back and forth and to work with someone. He was a trumpet player who's not a drummer but a great copyist, and kind of show each other what's clear. So a lot of this comes from getting things that are unclear. And with Hudson Music, we just did I've been really thrilled to get to work with a lot of my heroes. I mentioned Neil Peart before, but I just finished a book with them with Steve Gadd. And Steve said to me on many occasions when we were working on the book that he really didn't like computer notation and he likes handwritten notation. And in some of the materials that he's published, he's insisted on using handwritten notation, like getting an old school hand engraver. And while I didn't say this to him during the writing of the book, I definitely think that some people, when they do finale, I'm trying to make this visually attractive and make it make some musical sense so that it is, pleasing to look at, and it doesn't, come at you with some of the things that make a chart uncomfortable to look at, which we'll get into a little bit later. So uh, I'm pretty into the visual thing of making this stuff look nice, and that's part of why I put that poll out there, because I definitely have an opinion as to what's the clearest thing for drum set notation. Okay, so as far as finale goes, I made a little drum set 101 sample file here, and Heather, that'll be available for everybody.
The stuff, the resources, yes, are on the resources slide. I'll send at the end of the presentation.
Okay, so just from a high level point of view, this is a little chart that I made that has some of the things that I get that took me a while to learn. But before we start, I just want to say, if you're a beginner with finale, just to be super patient. There is definitely a learning curve, and just be confident that the program can actually do everything that you want it to do. It's just a matter of figuring out how to make that happen. So, start and just try to enter your notes and stuff. There's some things that other great engravers do that I don't do. I still do my entry by hand. I don't have a keyboard. I don't do anything really fast like that, but I've gotten pretty quick at entering the notes, with my mouse and keyboard, and then cutting and pasting. Drum notation, there's a fair amount of that you can do to shorten the process. But then I have other shortcuts that have sped it up. So just be patient. And this is going to sound silly because I'm giving a webinar, but honestly, the help file in Finale is absolutely fantastic. You can learn almost anything you need to learn from the help, and it's whoever you guys at Finale who wrote the help, kudos to you, because it's super clear and super helpful. As long as you just think about the keywords you want to type into the search, you should be good. So yeah, so this is a little drum chart 101 uh, thing that I made, and it has some standard things. But let's say that you're just getting started and you want to get going with a drum set chart. Finale's made it really easy to do that with some different options here. And my favorite of these options, so there's templates for different ensembles. There's a default document, which you can go in and make changes to and make it into a template. And then there's a setup wizard. And the setup wizard is actually the thing that I find is pretty super impressive, because it's made it really easy to do things. So you can go into the setup wizard and you can choose one of these ensembles. So if you choose jazz band, it's going to have it's going to have an ensemble instrumentation pre-selected, and then you can add or subtract to the ensemble. And then it has some preset themes you can use. Finale Maestro is the sort of traditional engraved look of music, and Finale Broadway is what I used here. It's a little softer look, a little more of a handwritten look. And then there's other settings in here. This jazz band one is really cool. If you're doing big band charts and you want the handwritten traditional big band thing, you can use this. You can use this font. And the cool thing about these, if you're a beginner, is that they will make all of the elements of the score match the style. So, for instance, well, actually, yeah, let me show you guys. So, I was getting ready for this, and I had an older version of where's this thing? I had an older version of this, and you'll notice in my older version, this 2-bar repeat doesn't match this font, and that's because I didn't use one of those other templates and make everything match. Now you can go in and start changing those elements to make everything match if you're doing something published and you want it to be all perfect, but obviously that's a little more of an advanced process. Okay, so getting back to this setup wizard. So If you're just making a drum chart and you don't have to worry about making a whole ensemble and making all the measures match up, you can choose create a new ensemble. You can choose Broadway. Then you can go into the instrument list and you can find under drums, you can find a drum set. You can add it. You can go next. You can, if you wanted to, you can enter in all your title and all your particulars here, and change time signature, do whatever you have to here, and then you can create a preset map that already has, oops, sorry, that already has a preset map of the drum set in it. And Finale has definitely done their homework, and they have a lot of things preset in. By the way, you'll notice that there's different voices on one line, and these different voices are attached to a matching MIDI assignment that changes the sound of them. So if you do play it back, you should get the proper sound. And this is pretty accurate. So that's the best way to start if you've never done this before. And then once you have that going, you can pretty much start engraving and then just quote unquote learn on the job all the other things that you might want to do. So that I think is the best way to get started. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was um, the note heads that you're using and the key. So this is one thing that I find to be interesting when you get notation from different people. You can there's for those of you who are familiar with the Percussive Art Society, they have a standard for what note heads and what spaces and lines on the staff should be used to assign the drum set. That's the Percussive Arts Society. If you want to go there, it's pas.org. And Modern Drummer, which is kind of the biggest magazine, has adopted that. So when I get manuscripts for Hudson Music, I'm a pretty strong insister that our authors use this notation. So this notation is the hi-hat is on the top line and the ride cymbal is on the, I'm sorry, the hi-hat's on the top space and the ride cymbal's on the line. The old school jazz charts have those two things reversed, so you still have a lot of stuff that's out in the lexicon that's got it reversed. For everything now and going forward, almost all the big websites, all the big publishers use this, and that's what I like. There's some other things that are not, used a lot in my notation, like these woodblock note heads. You could just ignore them. You don't have to go and take them out of your map. So I would definitely do a little research, maybe pick up a copy of an Alfred book that's newer, or Hudson Music book that's newer, or a Modern Drummer article, and look at those things. If you're engraving for a drummer and you use your own methodology, there's definitely a chance of confusing people. Now, having said that, there's a couple things in the key that I noticed that I do reversed. So I like this, and a lot of drummers like this diamond thing to be the ride cymbal bell, and this is just the bow of the ride or unspecified on the ride. So if you want to change those things, the easiest way to do that is by just using the special tools and changing the note heads one at a time, which you can do by clicking on that note head tool and then double clicking this note head and then just choosing whichever one. But let's say that you want to change it so that whenever you go to put in the ride, you have a choice between the ride bow and the ride bell, and it's always the diamond when it's the bell, and it's always the X when it's the bow. So you can manipulate. The best way to do this, if you're using Finale at all, is to manipulate your map. And the way I do that, and again, everybody has sort of their own, might have other hacks than I have, but I'll just show you what I have come up with. So in Score Manager, this brings up the different elements of your score, and in here it says notation, style, percussion, and then you go to settings, and then here's your drum set, and this is your drum set map, and you can edit it. And when you go into the editor, it will allow you, and I I left this the way it was default so I could show you guys. So right now this is defaulting to a diamond in the for the ride bell, and it's this closed note head right here. So right now it's saying that that's going to be the note head for that particular thing. So let's say I don't want it to be that, and let's say I want it to just be an X. And I would go here and select the X, and now I've changed that to the X. And then let's say I want I want the bell to be the diamond, and I could go in here and look for that diamond. Where is that sucker? There it is. And now when I switch those, we should have, yeah, see the bell is now the diamond, and the bow of the ride is now the X. So that's a super helpful hack. And then whenever you enter those things, they'll be like that. Okay. Let's see. I made a list of a few things that I thought would be helpful to you guys. So using layers is the way that you separate all of these different items. So the easiest way to switch between layers is down here at the bottom. Okay, these are your different layers. So if you have layer 1 selected and you decide to write in like a groove, and again, I'm doing this with oh, I've done something to my I'm not sure why it won't let me there we go. They started a new document here, so I'm encountering some interesting stuff. So let's say that I want to put in a groove up here. Oh, I see it's entering all the wrong sounds. So then you'd switch to the other layer, and it's going to automatically switch to, it's going to automatically put that facing stems down. So you can use as many different layers as you want. I know we did the poll, but I want to talk about this a little bit right now. So when you look at this notation, basically there's 3 different approaches here. This is the same groove, okay, written out 3 different ways. This way right here, all the stems are facing up. And in this way right here, the hi-hat is facing up and the bass drum and snare drum are facing down. And in this measure, this is basically what I would call hands up and feet down. So the bass drum's down and the hi-hat and the snare drum up. Heather, have people answered that poll yet? If you're there.
Yes, I'm here. They answered in the chat rather than the poll thing didn't come up in time. So it was 2 and 3 were the dominant ones of the poll, with some people voting for 1 as well.
Okay. So when we have, looking at drum education books and transcriptions all the time, I find that when the music starts to get thick, that this is by far the most confusing thing. It has its advantages in some cases. It definitely has its advantages in some cases, but when you start to have like really thick patterns with lots of notes and stuff in them, this starts to get really busy to look at. When I look at this right here, when I look at this measure, I can see like in a second that the hi-hat's playing straight 8th notes, and then I can concentrate on this little conversation that's going on between the kick and snare down here. And then with this one, well, I feel like it's clearer than that, and it lets you see how your hands are interacting. So this could be cool too. But for like standard rock beats and funk beats and things like that, hip hop, where the hi-hat's playing straight eighths, I think this is the clearest way to go. Now, um, yeah, I don't know why this is oh, there we go. Let's say that you're let's say that you have this. Let's say that you have let's say that you have something like this. Let's say you have Tom, and then you have like you have this kind of fill right here, right? Where you're and by the way, this is kind of I'll just take that and paste it. I'm on layer 2, so it's giving me a rest in the top that I would erase. But um, quick trick, utility, stem direction up. I definitely like most all my stems facing up when I do this. So if you're notating a fill on the drums or a pattern on the drums that's like, let's say someone's playing the toms and the bass drum is mixed into the fill, like that kind of thing, then I'll go to all stems up. So the point is I'll switch between them, but overall I feel like this is the clearest for that kind of thing. So let me see why. Let me see if this will solve my problem. Let me just so one thing that I want to talk about is that the when you right click, almost all the shortcuts that I use on a regular basis are sort of there. So this is really when I'm making my working drummer charts, which is kind of a thing I've been doing a lot lately. Um, my little project has been I have like 500 handwritten charts or more that I've had on gigs, and I've been gradually putting them into now. That's why I did this book, the Working Drummer's Chart book. So all these little things are here. So I want to add on a bunch of measures to the end. Let's say add 8 measures, then you're good to go. Now my default in my other program is I don't have in my other I'm sorry, template is that I don't have rests in these. I went in the document options and told it not to show rests. So anyway, you can switch between, you can totally have like this split notation and then go to like, maybe like something where all the stems are up in the next bar, like that, that would be totally okay. Of course, I would make it stems up, I would switch it to stems up. So having a mix of those is fine, but I definitely think that's the clearest thing. Okay, so that's one little topic. I wanted to mention that using expressions is definitely the best way to go about adding elements to your score. So let me open a different file. So this is my actual template that I use to make my drum charts. And as I mentioned to you, I like to use these different little elements, right? So everything from the song form elements to the dynamics to the little instruments and even just random notes, I do all of that with the expression tool, because the expression tool attaches whatever you're doing to the bar. You see that little arrow? So it's attaching to the bar. So let's say that this is letter B of the song. That's going to attach to that measure. So even if I insert a measure before, it's still going to say letter B right there. Okay. And just to give you an idea of all the different expressions that you can have in there, I use it for all kinds of different things, including like if you want to attach just like a lyrical cue or, say no crash. Sometimes the drummer in a chart, see, like for instance, right here, I have a crash right there, but let's say in this bar, I don't want the crash. all of that, anything like all of those notes should be expressions, so they attach to the measure. So let's say that you want to create one, okay? And the reason why, when I in the beginning when I didn't do this, if you move one measure, then whatever if you enter it with the text tool, it won't be attached to that, and it'll be a giant mess. You'll have to move all your text manually. I do use the text tool obviously for the titles and stuff at the top. That's the text tool, but the expression tool is for everything else. So if you want to add, and it has different these are different fonts, and then I switched fonts and I made a library. So the stuff you see at the bottom from here down, these are all ones that I created and changed the fonts. And then you save this as a template, and then you have your own like personal library. So let's say that you want to put in one of those cute little things I see on Broadway charts, like um, a text thing. You can just take an existing thing. Okay, you can create a mark, by the way, or you can just take one and edit it. And let's say I want to make a cute little comment there. You can make it right here as an expression, okay? And then whatever, change the font, do whatever you want to it. You could put a box around it. Let's say that you're afraid the drummer's really going to play loud. And put a rectangle around that. So now when you sign that, you're going to get whatever little cute thing you want, and it's attached to that bar. So use the expression tool for pretty much everything. Other, obviously all the dynamics are in there, all the rehearsal marks are in there. And then I use it for my shorthand as well. Oh, by the way, I also use it for metronome markings. So you can create an expression as a metronome marking, and then put in whatever note you want here. There's other ways to do this, by the way. This is just a hack I made so I could make the font of the lettering match that I thought was the easiest. I know our finale expert probably could tell you other ways to do the metronome markings, but I just saved this one as an expression, and now I can change it wherever I want. So let's say that this song changes tempo later on. Let's say that it changes tempo after I say not to get too loud. Let's say it changes tempo here. So just to reiterate, when you go in, if you want to change that, right, you have to make sure, if you're using your little library of expressions, you have to make sure that you don't edit that, because then it's going to change all the instances of it, which means it's going to change that one. And I don't want that one to change. So I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to edit the duplicate and then change the duplicate. So this way, you don't wind up changing everything. Let's make sure I'm not full of it. Yep. So that one stays the same. And then now there's your new metronome marking. So use the expression tool, super duper important. I do think, just as a little aside here. Oh, let me tell you how I do these little guys right here. So I find this to be a really super useful thing, like I said, to have shorthand. All I did to create this was I used the line tool, and the line tool has these different options over here, and there's this trill extension, which looks like that. And when I've seen people handwrite drum charts and they write 5 more, they always write a squiggly line. So I'm like, yeah, that's perfect. That pretty much looks exactly like it. You attached it to that measure, and then, as I said, your text is an expression. And then I have basically every, version that I could possibly use of play, however many measures. So that's why I make those. That's super useful for making a shorthand drum chart if you don't want to have to turn a lot of pages, or really any instrument, if you don't have to turn pages. So I'm skipping around in my outline here. Rhythm cues. So this one is pretty cool. Finale's definitely made this easier to put rhythm cues in. And by rhythm cues, I mean like those kinds of charts where you have the notation on the top. And let's say that you want to have notation on the top, and then you want to have slash notation underneath it for the musician to play, for the drummer to play, or any of the rhythm section instruments to play. Um, they made it pretty easy to do that. I'm pretty sure you have to do a tweak to your document to get it to work. But so the first thing you need to know is how to use alternate notation on your charts. And that's done by modifying the staff. So if you go into the staff tool, you're going to have a lot of different options um, about how to change the notation of your staff. Okay, so um, if you were to highlight this entire chart and then go to the staff tool, um, and edit the attributes, alternate notation, slash notation, okay, it's going to change the whole chart to that. And there's cases where you might want that, except for a few of the expressions. But oftentimes when I'm doing a chart, I don't want that. I want a mix of that, of a staff that's been modified with transcription. So the great secret notation is that the right click menu changes around based on what tool you're using. So right now I'm in the staff tool, and when I right click, I get all these staff, staff option changes right at my fingertips just with a right click. Now I'm going to undo that. I tend to stay in the selection tool, and in the selection tool, pretty much all of these options that are presented to you over here are really the ones you go to all the time to make quick modifications to the chart. So down here we have staff style, and I can say apply staff styles, and it can bring up the slash notation. And when I do this type of slash notation, you can set it up so that if you go up to the other layer and you enter your rhythm cues, that they show up above the measure of slash notation. So that's like super useful. Again, I'm like OCD with the stems facing up. Now you can see that little guy, he's stuck down there. Finale doesn't like to move the rests up. So all you do is grab it and pull it up, and then it'll be right where you want it. That's just a like a manual move, like you go over it and pull it up. Okay. Um, by the way, you can also, if for whatever reason you don't want that to show up at all, you can hide it. And the way you do that is you just go into the same note. I'm still on the quarter note rest, and you hold down the H and click it, and then it'll be hidden. And then it's like a toggle. So if you click it again, it'll be unhidden. So that's a super easy way to create that type of notation. So that's like really useful. And again, going on with the right clicking menu, for when you're making a chart, it's funny, if you're a band director or you're a professional engraver, you're going to be saying like, everybody knows this, why are you saying this? But I've seen so many drummer charts where they don't actually set off the sections of the songs. And please, no drummer jokes. Some of you might be thinking, well, yeah, I can tell you drummers don't know the sections of the songs. We actually like to see where we are in the song. So if I want that double, the double bar lines where you're setting off things is really helpful to us. So the drummers, include those in your charts. And I'm in this right click menu again. I know you guys, there'll be a recording so you can go back and just look at what I'm doing if it's helpful. Putting in those double bar lines where the song sections are changing is like super duper duper helpful, and it should be done. And you should indicate the sections of the song, drummers, even if the drum beat doesn't change. Okay. Here's another great little quick hack that used to be hard to do, but now Finale's made it super easy. If you want a multi-measure rest, it's right there in the right click menu. Okay. You can also do it other ways. One of the great things is there's multiple different ways to do most of this stuff. So it's like really, really good. Again, I don't know, this being Drum Charts 101, for some of you, this is probably not advanced. And for some of you, you're probably like, what is he talking about? But really, I think these are the kinds of things that used to stump me. Entering the notes on the right lines, really, everybody gets that. But some of these little other things that used to really confuse me that I thought I would sort of emphasize. Um, you can right now my right now my you'll notice that my little template that I use right here doesn't have measure numbers on it. And the reason why this doesn't have measure numbers on it is because, as I told you before, um, this isn't really 7 measures. It's not like a compressed rest like that. By the way, you could, if you wanted to put measure numbers and have them be accurate, you could use the compress rest tool. And I think maybe Zach, our expert, could confirm I'm right about this. The you could change the multi-measure rest bar thing and the text on here and make it do this and still count the right number of measures.
Yes, Joe, I think you can. My first thought is to change the font in the document options. But I think that might impact the entire score, though. I
Okay.
would probably need to think about it a bit more, but yeah, I
Yeah.
think you can.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Wow, I'm so happy. I spent hours thinking about these things. So the thing is, if I'm making a chart for myself, or I give this to my students and I have the double bar lines and I have the um the A's and the B's and stuff like that, I don't really need the measure numbers to be accurate. However, if I'm working like I was working with Broadway singers, if you're working in a traditional musical director situation, the bar numbers have to be correct. In that case, you wouldn't be able to do that. Anyway, so I forced my uh, document to not show measure numbers. So I can show that if anybody is interested. But Heather, is there a question?
Yes, there's been a couple questions relating to noting that you're using simple entry. Is that the only way you do your drum charts? Is that how you
Yeah.
code it?
So I use, as I said in the beginning, I use simple entry. I'm like a dinosaur that uses simple entry. I know there are faster ways to do it. But yeah, the answer is I do. I use simple entry, and you guys got me on the spot, so I'm not as quick as usual. Usually I'm like boop boop boop, and I get it in there a lot quicker. Um, as far as another question.
Yes, if you're making an abbreviated chart with like one or two measure grooves as verse and show chorus groove, but want to separate the measures so they're not connected, almost like educational lessons with one measure and then text. How do you do that separation?
I see. Okay. That's a great question. So I don't think this might be a good thing for part two. I'm not going to actually be able to get into any of the layout stuff. Um, Again, I'm not sure how how an expert would do that, but that is a really great question. So, okay, check this out. You could do this. So in the page layout, right? And I think this is what you're asking me. Like, so let's say, hang on. Let me just put some notes in a measure here. Okay. So you could do this. You could say fit measures and put this measure in its own system. Okay. You could fit this measure into its own system. Okay. And then you could, use the layout tool to separate them. This will move things around like that. Um, if you wanted to do it where you were creating space between the bars, like in a drum book, the answer is professional drum books aren't really done like that. Usually what you do is you do the notation in finale, and then if it's examples, in most of the instructional books that I've laid out and seen laid out, you would export those one measure finale files as TIFFs or JPEGs, and then use a page layout program such as InDesign or Quark Express to create the page. Because those programs, I use Quark and I have it on here. Probably not the subject of this seminar. Um, those programs are designed to do what you're saying. Finale can do it, but it's a little clunkier to do it. So again, that would be something for Zach. Zach, I don't know if you can how you would put how you would put a space between two measures and pull them apart. I don't know how to do that because I do it in Quark.
Trying to think about that right now too. I know you would definitely use the page layout tool, or you could, or you might be able to manually move the the margins for the measure. Me personally, I would probably just hide that measure with the staff tool.
Oh, that's a great solution. Cool, cool. By the way, you guys, for extra credit, see this 4-bar repeat thing? This took me a long time to get figured out. So anybody could do that. Send me an email and I'll give you a prize or something. Another question?
I was just gonna say, for the times when I've taken measures out like that to use in an educational context, I usually just do the same thing you do and put it in a PDF document, like or a document like that as well.
Yeah, the other thing, and by the way, you can use Word. Word works just fine for it. Yep. And then you can manipulate your text and do all that, and it's like really great. So okay, so let's say that this is just a pet peeve of mine as a drummer. Let's say that we're gonna have I'm gonna add 8 measures on here, right? And this is like really helpful. This for those of you guys if you're worried about your layout, try to make your layout make sense. So let's say there's a section of the song. I'm going to put all these measures into a. Oops, I just locked it with them 4 measures to a line. But I'm going to change that and I'm going to lock them into one system. Okay, and let's just say that this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's just say that this is an 11-bar phrase at the end, and let's just say that it's this, that it's going to be repeats. Okay. Now, if you are handed that and you're a drummer, that's like my worst nightmare. Okay, because my eyesight, along with my hearing, is getting worse as I get older. My eyes are going cross just looking at that. Okay, so what is helpful is for you to put something like, okay, so let's just say that this was basically what I'm saying is help the person count this number of measures. So when you get to this one, when you could go to your expression tool, and if you don't have one of these, you can make a little. Oh, I thought I had one of these suckers in here. You can make one of these little guys. I'm going to duplicate this and make a. And then I cannot tell you how many times in professional situations I get charts and it has like 30 of these in a row. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like I can't. So put a 4 there, put an 8 there. It's very helpful. And try to make it match the phrasing. Like it's a semantic question, right? So like I don't even actually know what the correct. So let's just say that let's say that you had a groove. Let me so here let me finish this. Let me make this a groove, right? And then let's say I forgot a measure here. I'm gonna insert a measure, insert measure stack 1. Okay, and then I'm gonna copy this groove down here. Okay, so yeah, this is actually kind of a semantic question because actually musically, that's the 4th bar of that phrase, but it's legally not the 4th bar of repeat. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's a music expert who knows what the actual rule is. That's like if I saw a 4 there, I would just be like, I just played 4 bars. Good, I'm good. Anyway, that's probably arcane question for this seminar, but So, okay, we have 10 minutes left. If there's any questions, definitely type them in. Yeah, song form elements I talked about, measure numbers. Oh, if you want to, you can force the with edit number regions, you can manipulate how they show up. So in document edit number regions, as edit measure number regions, I find this helpful all the time, just showing them at the beginning of the staff system, rather than seeing them every single bar. So it took, that's kind of buried a little bit, I think, but that's how you would show them if you wanted to there. Heather?
Yeah, so a question from the earlier in the webinar, would you be in favor of a standardization, even if it's not the notes heads that you prefer for notation, but it would make communication easier?
You mean for drum set
Yeah.
notation? Yeah, that's like an eternal question. I think the challenge is adoption. I mean, that's yeah, it's. I think it would probably be good. Maybe it's just we're suffering the being the baby instrument that's only 100 years old. We haven't figured it out yet. Yeah, it probably would be good, and I would definitely use the PAS version.
Are older books edited to reflect that, or are they?
No, no. So every book is still going to come with it's still going to come with a key. Every book's going to come with that key, and when it's still a little bit the Wild West, so you definitely have to refer to the key, um, yeah, in whatever book you're using.
Is it better to have all the measures written, or to play for, or to write the phrase "play for 32 bars"?
Okay, so that gets back to what I was saying before. It depends on the purpose of your chart. Okay, the answer is it depends on the purpose of your chart. If you're everything I'm showing you on this page, I'm making a chart for myself to use on a gig. It's not, I don't have a score where I'm uh, making sure I have the same exact bar numbers with the trumpet players and the trombone players. So if you're making it, if I'm making a chart for myself to use on a gig or for another drummer to use on a gig to keep them in place, and it's just like what I call a working drummer chart, then I don't need a transcription. I would rather just see shorthand. But if you're making an official type of chart, like for a Broadway ensemble or something that's more regiment, that's more specific, like you have a musical director that's going to be saying, put a button on the end of bar 96, then you can't do this. You can't have the shorthand.
Okay. Do you save these then as PDFs and you play them on your
Oh, wait,
iPad?
wait. So um so yeah, so how do I after I get one, let me see, I had one that was done. Let's see. Um, yes, what I do is I finish them, okay, and then I simply export it as a PDF. And that's really, really simple to do. You just go to export PDF right here and you save it wherever you want on your computer. Now, if you're going to do what Heather and I were just talking about, where you're going to make little one measure snippets and then you're going to export them, you would do the exact same thing. And you could export it as well. PDF is probably the standard now. You can export it as a PDF and then import that into whatever program you're using. I would just say one thing though, which is that if you're going to be doing that, like if you're going to try to go the route of doing a layout in Word or Quark or something, what I would try to do is I would go into this page size thing and I would make the page smaller, and that totally destroyed my document. But the reason why I do that is because if you just export, let's say you have one measure on the page and you export it, it's going to export an 8.5 by 11 page, and if you put it into a picture box in Quark or InDesign, you might be like fishing around to find where the actual printing it's going to have so much white in there, it's going to be hard to center it. So I would make a separate template for your exercise length. Let's say you're doing the kind of book that has like 100 exercises that are one measure long. I would make a new page size with just one measure template. And then what you guys are looking at for my working drummer charts is my template. Like it's got the fonts I want. So if you guys experiment with everything I said today, just save it and save different templates, and then you can come back to them. And to be honest with you, sometimes I even forget how I did stuff. Like when you do this notation on the top here, there's one other thing you have to modify before it will accept the notes to be visible. You have to click show notes in other layers. I was trying to do that to show you guys, and it took like 12 steps, but we're almost done, so I'm not going to show it now.
So there's kind of a related question about how do you create a legend or a key to show what drums you're going to use, and then also when you do instrument changes, how do you notate that?
Okay, so the key is simply, let me see if I can, the key is simply, I can actually fish around and find you one. All the key is it's a long measure with all the notes on it. Let me see if I can find one. You guys are going to see the inner workings of my mad scientist library here. Drum key, here it is. Drum key. Okay, so this is how we did the key. We just exported this and imported it as I described before, but we made a measure of whatever this is, 15/4, and then we hid the time signature with the staff tool. You know, you can edit staff attributes and, you know, tell it not to show the time signatures. Let's see, time signature and parts. Yeah, well, we hid all that stuff, included the clef, and then, as I said before, these are all expressions attached to the note below them. So that's how I do the key.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
And
I have.
go ahead.
Since we're getting close to the end, I had some other useful adjustments that are in my PDF. Which, Heather, you have that too, right?
Yep, it was just shared to the chat on the resources slide.
Okay, and some of those get a little deeper into detail. I have the universally changing the note heads. I have the play 8 shorthand. I have the slash notation with Q notes described. And then I have a list of other skills that, if I had time, I might have talked about, but there's never enough time. I did want to, before I wrap up, I did want to plug. I have my book, Working Drummer Chart Book, but I also have a website. It's called workingdrummercharts.com. It's under my joebergamini.com website, and I have a bunch of these charts. You know, they're for sale. Some of them are free. You know, there's a lot of free ones too. So if you want to check out some of them, that would be great.
Well, thank you so much, Joe, and thank you all for joining us today. Please fill out our survey so we can continue to improve our webinars for the future. The resource slide I've included in the chat also includes links to Joe's websites and workingdrummercharts.com. It also includes a promo code for 25% off and free shipping off alfred.com, off Joe Bergamini's materials available. There's a certificate of attendance, and yeah, thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Joe. It was a lot of great information today.